whole life, my kind of aching dream was to start a company. And as I look back, I realized that the reason was that I was seeking freedom. I thought I was going to be the boss. I thought I was going to be financially free. And I had a desire to serve people and help people. So I started a company that was very much in public service. We were an education search engine. And I really, in many ways, I achieved my dream. I was running the company. We were not a huge success, but we were successful. And I lived every day kind of managing the thing. And I would say I was happy, I enjoyed it. But at the same time, something was missing, and it was always, I started to wonder, gosh, this can't be all that there is. And so I started to recognize, gosh, this one thing that's been my life's dream hasn't brought me the fulfillment or happiness that I'm seeking. And that was a big recognition. And so I started to recognize that if this thing didn't bring it for me, then really none of my other dreams, to get married, to have a wife, to have kids, anything else, I just recognized none of those things are going to bring me this inner fulfillment. I must start looking kind of this way. And so I started meditating. I'd never done that before. So I started to explore. I used the app Headspace. And so I was meditating for a while, and then for longer and longer, and eventually it brought me to my first silent retreat. And that happened to be with Guruji. And I literally, a friend, in the same week that I thought, I want to go on a silent retreat, a close friend of mine sent me this one, and I said, okay, I'm going to trust and just see. I didn't know about satsang. I had seen a couple YouTube videos of Guruji online, and I felt it, but I wasn't wowed. And I literally went on a silent retreat without knowing that there was satsang kind of there. And then over the course of the retreat, the first couple of days, I was just literally sitting there wondering, what is this about? What is he saying? I feel it and it's powerful, but I can't understand what he's saying. And then maybe on the third day, I was I think he's talking about enlightenment, And my background is Hindu. My parents and grandparents are Hindu, and so I'd heard about this thing, nirvana, enlightenment. But my conditioning, what I'd heard is that it's impossible. It takes forever, many lifetimes, decades, if you're lucky, and most people never reach there. And so I'd written it off as a possibility. But then I'm meeting somebody who's saying, no, it's possible, and it's possible now. I was but how do I do it? So I'm sitting in the audience, just projecting this question at him, tell me how to do it, And what I heard was, first actually, he broke through another belief I had, which was, I was just feeling gosh, what I've heard is that I got to be perfect. I have to be the most humble, the most wise. I have to have no desires. I have to let go of all these things, and then I'm a candidate for enlightenment. And he was no, you have it backwards. First, you recognize who you are, and then all of these things just fall into place through the power of that recognition. And so I was oh, I don't have to fix myself. I just have to find out who I am, and I don't frankly know what that means. But okay, I'll follow it. So then I was thinking, how do I do this? And so then I heard the question. He said, that which perceive, in your life you experience the five senses. We're all familiar with the five senses. He says, but you're able to perceive another thing, which is thoughts. And let's say also emotions. So all these things you can perceive, your senses and your emotions, and they make up your experience. I was okay, that's fair, I believe that. And he was but the one that perceives those things, can that be perceived? And I was just sitting there okay, let me, okay, five senses, okay, I see the senses, yeah, I see thoughts, okay, I can see that. But I'd never looked this way, I'd never looked backwards into my experience. So then, silent retreat, I'm sitting there with all this silent time. I was okay, I'm just going to sit and just look at this question and try to do it, try to look that way and see what is perceiving all this, And at first it gave me a bunch of headaches, and I was just struggling and putting so much effort in. But there was an earnestness. I was interested, it was alive in me, that question. And in the first retreat itself, I remember Guruji saying, I felt okay, I understand what he's saying, but I understood intellectually. And he said in satsang, intellectual understanding is not enough. You have to have direct experience. So then I'm wrestling with this question in my silent time, and in satsang, finally on the fifth day I said, I was projecting again this question to him, like, give me the direct experience. Prove to me that what you're saying is true. And then sitting in satsang, I experienced a dramatic opening, you could say. Like, I now would call it the spaciousness of what I am, the spaciousness of being. You know, it was like all of my thoughts vanished for, let's say, 10 minutes. And I was just sitting there with no thoughts, just with this presence, and looking at my body and saying, wow, I've always known that I'm not this, but now it's so obvious that I'm not just this form. And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, there's no end to this presence. I didn't call it presence at the time. I was just literally like, whoa boy, you know, like it was like, you know, it was this massive experience. And then at that moment I said, this feeling, this experience I'm having now, this is what I've been seeking for my whole life. Like, this is the reason I thought I was going to start this company. I thought it was going to give me this feeling. But now I'm just sitting here in a room, looking into my own experience and experiencing the greatest joy and peace and lightness and possibility, you know, just a vast openness. I'm just sitting here and it's here. And that was the moment that for me I said, I found it. And I will spend the rest of my life in the pursuit of this, the understanding of this, and in service to this. And it's the beginning, you know, it's like the beginning of understanding, of recognizing that this person that I've always thought I am, you know, Nihal, the one, you know, with these parents and this family and this company and this life, like this little role that we're playing, like it's like a movie, a little movie of our life. There's a recognition at some point that, wait a second, like I'm not this, like all these details and memories and identities that I have, it's not actually what I am. And for a while you're like waking up out of that dream of this person you think you are, and so you have these moments of powerful recognition of like, oh, I'm not that, and that guy is the one who's worried and afraid and arrogant and suffering. It's that guy, but now I'm seeing I'm not that. And then but the dream world, you know, like this experience of like, gosh, reality, as we call it, like this physical experience, it's so entrancing. You just have an experience and immediately you're back thinking you're this guy. And so you fall back into the belief of it. Then you come back to satsang, and again you have this experience of like, oh, I'm not that at all, you know? And you feel the vast presence and joy. So you seesaw like this for some time until it's like a habit. You just start to stop believing in this little guy again. You just stop believing in it as much. And when you stop believing in it, this is how you experience, like your desires go, because that your true nature doesn't desire anything. It's this little guy that does. Fears go because it's this little guy who's afraid. And so as soon as you recognize like, but I'm not this guy, I'm, you could say, the space behind him. I'm the perceiver of this guy. I don't need any of this, you know, but still he's there. He could play, you know, yeah, you know, he can exist. I'm not in conflict with him. But when I think I'm the person, I'm in this body-mind thing and I have needs, then I suffer. Because, of course, sometimes my needs are met, other times they're not. But when I recognize, but all of this is happening in front of me. And when I'm simply observing neutrally with this space, wow, there's nothing more perfect than that. And everything can come and go, and it doesn't touch what I am.